Khaleda Zia's death marks the end of a defining time in Bangladesh politics and, of course, a complex chapter in India-Bangladesh ties. She was born in pre-partition India. She was politically known for being tough, and her tough nationalist positioning towards New Delhi was something that all of us have heard about. The two-time Prime Minister shaped decades of rivalry at home and friction across the border. As leader of the BNP and principal challenger to Sheikh Hasina, Khaleda Zia's politics influenced debates on water sharing, security cooperation and regional alignment when it comes to India. With her passing, Bangladesh stands at political crossroads and India faces a neighbor entering a new phase without one of its most prominent and some would say polarizing figures. So the key question is, will Dhaka's politics move beyond old rivalries now? Will the BNP redefine itself without Khaleda Zia? And will India-Bangladesh ties become more pragmatic, or will it become more uncertain? Joining me tonight is a panel of guests. We have Pinak, Ranjan, Chakravarthy, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. He's also the former Secretary MEA. We also have Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Expert, Senior Fellow, ORF. Thank you, both of you, for being part of this broadcast. But first, we have Ankit joining us. Ankit, help us understand what is the situation now. Tributes have poured in from different parts of the world. What is the situation now on the ground?
Well, today has been, one of those days where in Dhaka at this moment you are looking at the precipice of a change as far as history is concerned. Khaleda Zia, 80-year-old former Prime Minister, three-time Prime Minister between 91 to 96 and then 2001 to 2006, passed away at the Evergreen Hospital at 6 a.m. This morning, and that too almost as Bangladesh is ready to write another chapter in its elusive journey towards democracy. And Vasudha, let me also tell you that tomorrow the funeral procession, the final rites will happen. The burial will be at the tomb next to her husband, which is right opposite to the parliament here in Dhaka. And the General Zia Rahman's grave, her grave, Khaleda Zia's grave, would also be next to her. Now, it is also important that post her demise, there are, of course, tributes pouring in. I was at the hospital through the day, and there were supporters, those who were crying, those who were weeping. This is also a time when the battle of the Begums, which started in the 90s and then went on to 2024, when Sheikh Hasina was overthrown, she fled to Delhi. And so the battle of the Begums, that chapter also comes to an end, because remember, Awami League will not be fighting the election. It is banned. It is not fighting the next election. So for the BNP now, Tarique Rahman becomes the accepted leader. He is going to take the party forward. He's just been here for 5 days, and then tomorrow, of course, is going to be a show of strength, a show of sympathy that they would want to, in fact, roll in till the time the elections happen. The people here are hoping that at least for the moderate section of Bangladesh, that somewhere BNP, which always has been in alliance with the Islamists, dials down that rhetoric, and the space which has been left over by the Awami League is somehow taken by Tarique Rahman, who made all the right noises once he came back. But what will happen from here, what happens after the elections on February 12th, all that we'll have to wait and see. Tomorrow, of course, is the day of mourning. A national holiday has been declared with 3 days of national mourning here in Bangladesh.
Also, Ankit, you're there at a very sensitive time in Bangladesh. We've seen murders, we've seen lynching, we've seen all kinds of violence happening there, especially against the Hindu community. Ankit, help us understand, with Khaleda Zia's death and also the country in a state of mourning, what is happening on ground with respect to the safety and security of minorities?
That's a very important question, because so far what we have seen, two things have It seems that Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus has not been able to check whether it was deliberate or otherwise. The fact is that the sense of security among the minority communities is not there. Today there was another death, a murder of a Hindu man, though I must say that I spoke to all Hindu organizations here. It is not a communal related incident. It is an accidental firing, but the fact is that it is fueling a lot of sense of insecurity right after what happened. Last year when the government fell of Sheikh Hasina, post that minorities' houses were targeted. It has continued even now with that horrific killing of Deepu Chandra Das. We went to his village as well, and we brought you those reports here on NDTV. It is very difficult as an Indian journalist to report from here. I have in fact reported, and I was at the protest site where Usman Hadi supporters are sitting today. They have been quiet in respect of Khaleda Zia, but lot of anti-India rhetoric. So the security for the minorities and the anti-India rhetoric is something that the government has not checked at all. It is only growing here. And in that aspect, it will be very important to see what happens post tomorrow. Because remember, there is also a sense that at this moment, there isn't any party which is pandering, especially to the minorities. When it's come to the NCP, the student-led movement, which turned into a party, positioned itself as a liberal, party with inclusivity, that has also tied up with Jamaat-e-Islami, the hard-right Jamaat-e-Islami extremist party. So at this moment, that space seems to have been vacated, and that has in fact created a sense of fear and further decline towards radicalization in Bangladesh. The big question is if Tarique Rahman gets that opportunity to lead the country, would he be able to check, and would he be able to somehow, the legacy of his mother and father, which was staunch nationalist Bengali, Bangladesh pride, at sometimes also loggerheads with India, does he dial down on that rhetoric? That remains a big question, Vasudha.
Right. Thank you, Ankit. Be safe, and we'll keep coming back to you for more details. Let me go across to Sushant Sareen now. Mr. Sareen, help us understand, how should Indians remember Khaleda Zia? Very simple question to you.
I think that's a question that should have been put to Ambassador Chakravarthy. He probably dealt with her in one form or another, but I don't think the Indians will remember her very fondly. Look, she was a big leader in Bangladesh. There's no doubt about that. There were two poles of Bangladeshi politics, and she held one pole. And you have to admire her courage that she took up the cudgels on behalf of her slain husband and then made a place for herself in Bangladesh's politics. So to that extent, yeah, I think there are certain things that you can admire about her. But I think as a leader, she wasn't exactly the most successful either in Bangladesh or in improving relations with India. We had fairly testy relations as long as she was at the helm of affairs. But of course, I think the relations were far better in some ways than what they are today under her watch. The second problem with her was that she seemed to get swayed by some of her advisors who were fairly shady characters. And I think some of the decisions which she took, or she allowed things to happen under her watch, actually poisoned the well of India-Bangladesh relations, especially in her last term. Before she was ousted and a caretaker government took over power. This is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2007. And that period was probably pretty bad between India and Bangladesh, because that was the time when, Bangladesh was becoming a kind, or had become rather, a kind of an epicenter of terrorism against India on the Eastern Front. There were these separatist organizations that had been given sanctuary in Bangladesh. The Pakistanis had been given a run of the place in Bangladesh. There were Islamist terror groups which were operating out there, not just against Bangladeshi population, but also against India. So I think if that is the legacy she left behind, it's not a very happy legacy to leave behind. But other than that, she was effectively not in politics for the last many years, partly because of the kind of crackdown that Sheikh Hasina had launched on her. She was in jail. She was keeping very bad health. So in a sense, her demise hasn't really changed anything in Bangladeshi politics. I think what is more relevant is the return of Tariq Rahman,
Yes.
and we'll have to wait and see whether Tariq can actually play a role and pick up the legacy, family legacy, and take it forward. Uh, but that we will need to wait and see how that plays out.
Right, very important points, Ambassador Chakravarthy. I mean, should India recalibrate its strategy? And like Sushant Sareen has been talking about, Khaleda Zia has been inactive for a long time. What has been your understanding, your assessment of her achievements, her undoing? Because today I read about how she boycotted polls, her pandering to the Jamaat-e-Islami. What were the good things about her, and what do you think really something that contributed to her undoing?
Let me begin with the good things, because Sushant has given a very, very good briefing on what she represents and where she comes from. The good part of her reign was that she did provide stability and opened up business. There was a liberal business atmosphere. So the business community welcomed all that. The ready-made garments industry flourished. So those were some of the good things. But then that was basically internal. So I think it was a business-oriented party, the BNP. But I remember in 2001, when she came to power, there were massive attacks on the Hindu community.
Yes.
And done by BNP, by the way, not the Jamaat. And we tend to look at the Jamaat as very extremist and all that. But, the BNP can be more extremist than the Jamaat at times. So I remember personally that during the Durga Puja, we had to go and, give some solace to the Hindu community. And the National Security Advisor had to fly in from Delhi and tell Khaleda quite bluntly in a meeting that, if that continued, then there will be repercussions from India. So, and immediately that thing died down because she understood that this was serious. India had taken it seriously. But as Sushant has pointed out, that she was carrying on the legacy of her husband, who had propounded the theory of Bangladeshi nationalism.
Yes.
He sort of moved away from Bengali nationalism and propounded Bangladeshi nationalism, in which he gave the first priority to the religion and said that we are Muslims first and later Bengalis or whatever. That kind of ideological orientation that was given, it was primarily to build an identity. As you know, in both Pakistan and Bangladesh, there is a question of identity. Who are we? I mean, Pakistan, I won't talk about, Sushant knows better, that to build an identity, trying to do, by the way, with some of the general being saying various things. But in Bangladesh, it was of a lesser kind of mindset, in the sense that they do not deny belonging to the Indic civilization, and they do not deny that they share, the cultural, the space with India. But then in what way are you different? So this was what they had tried, and Khaleda carried on with that legacy.
Right.
She was very brave because she had been married at 15 and became a widow, had 2 small children, and yet had to take over the party and then carry it forward. So that's one aspect.
Very interesting, Sushant Sareen. So Ziaur Rahman was different from Bangabandhu, is what I understand completely, in terms of what nationalism meant for the people of Bangladesh. So this generational and gender change that we are about to witness in Bangladesh, Sushant Sareen, how do you look at this being, how do you see this benefiting India? What kind of preparation should India need to have with respect to Tarique Rahman and engaging with the new BNP?
No, for initially, Sudha, I thought when you're talking about a generational change, you're talking about the thugs on the streets who pretend to be students. And frankly, that does not augur very well for India because they're both ignorant. and they have no understanding of how the world functions. But yeah, later on you clarified Tariq Rahman. So look, Tariq again had the reputation when he was in power because of his mother. He had the reputation of being somewhat of a shifty character. He would, on the face of it, appear to be very reasonable when he was engaging with the Indians. But he was considered to be part and parcel of all the shenanigans that were going out by various members of the BNP who were hand in glove with the Pakistanis and involved in, arms smuggling and all kinds of other nefarious activity. So this was the reputation he had. Some of it was probably true. Some of it was probably not true. But I think there is also a sense that maybe he's also a very pragmatic guy. And because he's been out in the cold for almost 17 years,
Right.
perhaps a certain degree of maturity has come into him. And maybe he has changed from what he was when he was his mother's son. Because that is what he was. Was his source of power. Today, he has to head the party himself. Will he rise up to the occasion? Will he be able to understand what Bangladesh needs? Or will he pander to the lowest common factor that Ambassador Chakravarthy was talking about and define Bangladesh's existence and its identity in everything that is not India, which means that you are again back to East Pakistan.
Right.
Because Pakistan defines itself in everything which is not India. They have no identity of their own.
Yeah.
They are confused kind of a lot. They have no sense of nationalism, no national identity. Does Bangladesh want to go down that route? Or can Bangladesh be comfortable in its Bengali identity and not define itself in terms of being anti-Indian? Can Bangladeshi nationalism survive not being anti-India?
Right.
And that is going to be the big trick for him. If he
Right.
can pull that off, I think there is something to look forward to between India and Bangladesh. If he can't, then I suppose we are back to where we were in the past.
Right. Ambassador Chakravarthy, your last words, sir. What are your expectations from Tarique Rahman, and do you think this anti-India rhetoric that goes on in several parts of Bangladesh, are you optimistic that it might come down, given that Sushant Sareen has also been saying that he seems like a practical guy, but then he's also somebody who has a certain legacy to protect?
The rhetoric that you hear from the streets can be ignored. These are immature people, young people who are, who have inflamed the public opinion, and part of it is to inflame public opinion. It's a part of their, narrative and policy to, inflame public opinion against India. That is definitely there, and anti-India feelings in Bangladesh is nothing new. It has existed. It goes up and down, depends on who is in power. Now, on Tariq himself, I have a feeling that he may be more pragmatic because he
Right.
knows he has to live a huge baggage that he carries from the past,
Right.
and which is very adverse to you. And if anyone wants to read more about that, they can look at WikiLeaks and see what the American ambassadors have talked about him.
Okay, that's our homework for tonight. Thank you both of you for joining me on this broadcast. Completely out of time. Sushant Sareen, you wanted to make a point, but next time for sure. So this is also an opportunity for India to look at Bangladesh and engage a neighbor no longer defined by one of the towering rivals who has passed away, Khaleda Zia, but also to engage with Pakistan with the choices of the next generation of leaders that it makes. With that, it's time for a short break. My colleague Padmaja Joshi joins you on the other side.